And I'm surprised more people aren't pissed off. Bernie was real close in all of these races. Even when they said that he's nowhere close. Bernie's nowhere close to winning. He just need to go sit down somewhere. He was still getting 53%, 48%. He was still in the game. I could see now if it was 21%, 14%. Bernie was getting numbers and is still getting numbers, and people still back him. I'm just here for the comments. There are a lot of people out there like, you know, I'm still voting for Bernie. I don't care who's on the ticket. We got somebody calling. 617-282-0062. It's probably Hillary's talking about some Tayla. You know Bernie Sanders ain't gonna win. The Rising Caller, you're live.
Good morning. I'm just as disappointed, but you kind of figure this. Our people are name brand fools. The name brand sneakers, the name brand politicians. Just like JFK, that's how the clans are for them. Just like white Jesus. No matter how much they don't get crap out of it, they'll still be faithful. And niggas were faithful to each other as they are to white Jesus and these fake white politicians. We will rule the world.
Who run the world, girls? Who run the world? Apparently Hillary Clinton, because that's all the media portrays. Thank you, Mr. Nubian. Love and appreciate you. This is one of the saddest stories that I have ever read in my life. If this is anywhere close to true, my heart is broken. ISIS is threatening to destroy Egypt's pyramids. And a latest video showing fanatics blowing up a 2,500-year-old temple in Iraq. A 2,500-year-old temple in Iraq. And they are threatening to destroy Egypt's pyramids. If they don't go and get some National Guards, International Guards, UN peace members, I'm going to need for our the aliens coming back, they blow that thing up. This is horrible. The footage show militants vowing to demolish ancient temples of Nabu in Iraq. The clip then shows a massive explosion, reducing the building to rubble. Militants dressed in black vows to blow up ancient sites built by infidels. It breaks my heart. 2,500-year-old temple gone, with threats of destroying Egypt's pyramids. If y'all don't care about that, you just might as well kill yourself, because you don't care about a damn thing in this world. That's history. That can't be brought back. We cannot rebuild that. For those who don't know, we have never rebuilt a pyramid. We cannot rebuild those structures because nowhere in 2016 do we have the capability to pick up one of those monolithic rocks. One of those monolithic boulders. We today do not have the machinery to recreate what was made thousands of years ago. If you didn't know, now you know. If you don't believe me, just go read. The horrific dash cam video shows an officer excessively tasering a 17-year-old boy for so long that he went into cardiac arrest and suffered brain damage. Bryce Masters, 17 years old, of Kansas City, was tasered 4 times longer than police are trained to during a traffic stop in September of 2014. The 20-second shock sent the teen into cardiac arrest. The dash cam footage shows the cop then dropping Masters onto the pavement. Masters placed in a medically induced coma and suffered brain damage. The officer, Timothy Runnels, was sentenced to a 4-year prison term. Hey, he still got longer than the raper on the college campus. The crazy thing about this is before they're able to be certified with the taser, they have to be tasered themselves. And no, he was not a black man. This was a young white male, 17 years old. I'm trying to tell you, even though there is excessive force, mostly in the black community, I do need for you to understand that this is a mentality of police that can do whatever the heck they want with no consequence. I say it over and over again. I know people want to make it a black thing. People want to make it a white thing. It is a power thing. It is a power struggle for them to sit here and assert their power over you. I am the judge, the jury, and you're tried. Actually, you're not tried. You're in a coma at 17 years old because I decided to tase you for 20 seconds. And when they say that he dropped him, so he had him in his arms, dropped him, and then dragged him. Mind you, the baby unconscious. Watch the video. It will sicken you. He's 17 years old. It was a traffic stop. It makes you wonder what's going on in your household that you feel like you can come to work and do this to somebody. And I want you to remember the numbers. The statistics are not in front of me, but I want you to remember the numbers about how many police officers are abusers in their own homes. School claims the rape student was responsible for her own attack because she had had one drink before being sexually violated by a guard in a college building. The victim had one cocktail on school-run research trip in Puerto Rico in 2012. She walked onto the roof where the building security guard raped her. The guard was suspended by the state police in 2011. He is now in jail for rape. The victim sued Massachusetts Worcester Institute for negligence. They say that they did not do a proper security check to protect the college building. The school attorneys have hit back saying the victim was to blame for her drinking. At what point in time does a man asserting his penis into me make me responsible for his actions? Please tell me, when you decide to do something illegal, when you decide to, whatever actions you decide to do, how am I responsible for your stupidity? How am I responsible for the actions you decided to take? Please, I don't care if I'm drunk. I don't care if I'm unconscious. I don't care if I'm walking down the street butt naked. That does not give you the right to take any of my womanhood. How am I responsible? Lord have mercy. This is real stuff. This is real life. I can't make this up. A school has partly blamed the student for her own rape at a university leased building because she had consumed one drink before being attacked by a security guard. Worcester Polytech Institute in Massachusetts made a controversial claim in legal papers filed on Tuesday. It was a response to the student who last year filed a civil suit against the college, claiming they failed to provide a safe environment for the students, reports the Boston Globe. The student, who had not been named publicly for legal reasons, was raped by a security guard in San Juan, Puerto Rico during a university-led research project in April of 2012. Again, one of the things that baffles me is, how do we have swift justice, but the baby was raped when, filed a report when, and this is what year? How is this swift justice? Never understood that. She had drunk one watermelon cocktail that contained about 3 measures of liquor in it before walking onto the roof of the student housing complex. Her rapist, William Rodriguez, a former Puerto Rican state officer, is now serving a 20-year jail term in Puerto Rico after being convicted of the rape 4 years ago. In her civil suit, the student accused the school of failing to background check Rodriguez, who has been suspended from the state since 2011 for selling bullets to an undercover cop. The Worcester Polytech directors have hit back, claiming the woman was partially responsible because she was drinking that night and chose to follow a stranger into a dark rooftop. Oh, I'm sorry. You see this one drink in my hand? This says rape me. Since when? If you can't hear it, I'm so frustrated with the way we do business in this country. And if you didn't hear yesterday's show, the way I feel about our criminal justice system, I watched the Netflix original documentary series, video show, whatever, however they named it, How to Make a Murderer. That infuriated me. I already know how unjust the legal system is because I have black males that are in my family. But after watching what this man went through, all of the hell they put him through, I have absolutely no faith in our criminal justice system whatsoever. I have cousins that are judges. I have cousins that are lawyers. I have no faith in the criminal justice system at all. Lord of mercy. We got a call on the line, 617-282-0062. Good rising, caller, you're live.
Good morning, Tayla. Good rising.
Good rising, my king. How are you?
I'm good. The story about the girl in Puerto Rico it made me so angry as a father of three girls. And and this is the thing. The institution is not saying that they blame the victim. They're going, it's actually the insurance company that insures them or insures the building that is blaming the girl. But the institution is caught in the middle, and it sounds like they don't have a backbone. If insurance companies can push this type of vote on people for being rude, this is exactly why any other insurance that you might have, and you think about it, they're rapists themselves, insurance companies. That's why they're blaming the girl because they don't want to pay. It's the insurance company that's blaming the girl. But the university has no backbone when it comes to this from everything I'm hearing that I've heard about the story. They're saying they would never blame a victim, but yet and still, it's their carrier, their insurance carrier that says it was the girl's own fault, but the institution hasn't taken a stand to back the girl.
So if I say that I'm not guilty and my lawyer says, oh, she pleads guilty, then my representative has then spoke on my behalf. I don't care what the university's saying. Their representative that speaks on their behalf is blaming the victim.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. That's why I said the university is trying to hide behind the fact that the insurance company does not want to pay, so they're blaming the girl, and the university has no backbone. That university should be stripped and dispensed.
And you do know that's here right in Massachusetts, right? Right here in Massachusetts.
What's that?
The university is right here in Massachusetts.
Oh, they have one here too.
It's insane. It's insane.
It is insane. When I heard it on the news a couple of mornings ago, it just caught my attention right off the bat. So later that evening, I ended up watching the news again, and the story was featured again on a different news station. So this is, like I said, this is the stand. The institution has let like you said, their representatives speak for them, and they are basically blaming the girl for having a drink or two. It doesn't matter how many she had. Violation is violation. No means no. If I don't tell you yes, that means no as well.
If I'm unconscious, that means no too.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. If I can't tell you yes, that means no.
And I can understand as a father of three girls, like you said, that this disgusts you, and it totally disgusts me because there was I'm really big on memes. There was a meme that said if a student shoots another student, the university will call the police. If a student cheats on a test or steals school property, they will call the police. But if a student is raped on school property, they try and deal with it in the containments of the school. And it's just like, why would you call the police for all these other incidents, but you refuse to call the police and get police involved? Yeah, exactly.
Right. And that's every institution. That's the thing too. People, if your kids are going to school, you have to be proactive. You have to have these conversations with your ladies. If you have sons, you have to have the conversations with your sons. What's expected as a man, what's not expected. Don't just think because you got into the gate of the college door that all the problems are gone away. No, there are still problems that lay on campus. And we as parents have to stay proactive even when they make it through the graduation and they get their acceptance letters. We still have to be proactive. We have to teach. I don't have a son, but I got a couple of nephews. And one, I keep my foot on his throat because he's just a little bit out of control. As far as my daughters, they know what is expected as a lady. They know what I feel is ladylike. They know what I feel is definitely unprofessional. It's definitely unethical.
Well, guess what? If one of your daughters drinks a cocktail and then goes up to the roof of a building and she's liable to be raped, it might be her fault, though.
It might be, and it's going to be everybody else's fault and wrong, too. I'm going, I don't want to say post, but yeah, the president of the institution, and anybody else that is involved might find that might be invited to a party on that same roof, but they might not leave. I'm like, you're not gonna blame my daughter for being raped because she had a drink. This society we live in, all this liberal stuff, all these making exceptions to the rules. No, we need to get back to what it was. It is what it is, what it was. Black and white. So when it was wrong to be a rapist, it should still be wrong to be a rapist. You can't blame a victim for being raped. And a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm not even gonna comment on that people are making exceptions for these days, but no one's doing nothing about it. People are talking about it, but no one's actually doing anything about it. You know, like I didn't hear the show yesterday, but just real quick, like, how does the Commonwealth of Massachusetts feel that they can charge a man interest on money he didn't borrow? That's crazy.
You know what? When we have our financial show, when we have our financial week, that'll be a great question to ask. You want to know why? Because this is the United States of America, and from day one, we've been stealing, raping, and taking for ourselves. So the truth of the matter is, that's the truth. We'll rape you financially, we'll rape you physically, we'll take whatever we think we want, and then we'll go ahead and change the history books to make us look like the victors. So that's the truth of the matter. And if anybody else wants to disagree, then please show me differently in a history book. I'm sorry, those lied too. But I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope you have an awesome day today. He's right. Daddy of 3 girls said this is ridiculous. And it is. And what are we doing to stop it? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. I'll leave that right there. New York is to get the world's biggest vertical farm. A giant 70,000 square foot lettuce factory will produce 2 million pounds of food a year. The facility will produce more than 75% yield than an outdoor farm, the same size, and uses 95% less water. Hold on, I don't think you understand. So, 70,000 square foot lettuce factory will produce 2 million pounds of food a year. It will produce 75 more yield than an outdoor farm the same size, but will use 95% less agua. You get that? It's able to achieve this by switching between 22 crops a year that will grow 250 different varieties. The construction began last year, and the firm is starting to operate in areas of the facility that are currently complete. I'm so excited, and I just can't hide it. Let it go. Why am I excited? Because I think that this is exactly what we need in our schools. This is exactly what we need in our urban buildings, our affordable housing. We need to teach people how to fish again. We need to teach people how to grow food again. We need to teach people how to be self-sufficient. One of the things that I never understood is how do we or how have we continuously dropped off food to Haiti, dropped off food to parts of Africa, dropped off food and foreign aid across the world, but we won't invest the time and the money to show you how to grow this crop for yourself so we don't have to continuously feed you? Why do we want people in our hand eating the crumbs when we could be teaching them how to build for themselves? I never understood that aspect of ourselves. Why do we do this? One of the parents yesterday, as we discussed, what advice would you give parents so that whatever mistakes you made, new parents don't make those mistakes? And one thing that came up on Facebook was you can't do everything for your child. You have to teach your child how to be self-sufficient. You have to teach your child how to have, that timing, that self-control, that responsibility. These are things that you have to teach your children in order for them to be productive adults. But if we have this mentality when it comes to our children, why don't we have this mentality when it comes to those that we take care of, outside or even inside our country, whether it be through welfare or whether it be through foreign aid? Why are we not teaching people to cultivate land? Why are we not teaching people to grow their own food? Indoors, outdoors, whatever. The U.S. loses at least 1.5 million acres of productive farm year to urbanization every year. 1.5 million acres of productive farmland to urbanization every year. Do you know how much green space we don't have in the city of Boston? Do you know how much green space we are taking up for our buildings? How much green space we are now turning into apartments, condos, houses nobody who currently live here can afford? $2 million of food a year, 95% less water. This is a win-win for me, and I love it. They gave me 6 months, 6 years, they gave him 6 months. An exonerated football star who was wrongfully convicted of rape as a teen cites privilege in the Stanford case. The former football star, Brian Banks, spent a little over 5 years in prison after being falsely accused of rape at the age of 16. He was exonerated after his accuser was secretly recorded admitting to making the whole thing up. Banks said that the Stanford rape case decision stems from privilege. Brock Allen Turner, 20 years old, was found guilty of raping 23-year-old at a frat party. Turner faced up to 10 years in prison, but a judge gave him up to 6 months in under good, if you're good, Lord have mercy, behavior. If he has good behavior, he can reduce that down to 3 months. He admitted that he removed the woman's underwear, penetrated her with his hands, and touched her breast, but he has always denied raping her. Banks says that it seems like the judge based his decision on his lifestyle. Banks is a black man. Brian Banks, former football star, spent a little over 5 years in prison for something that was a total and complete lie. Brock Allen Turner, 20 years old, found guilty of raping 23-year-old at a frat party, was caught at a frat party. The man who caught him said that the girl was completely knocked out. She was unconscious. He was caught in the act. 6 months. Good behavior, 3 months. A man that was accused, 6 years. Does anybody care? Of course not. For what? He did something. We're always so quick. Always so quick. I want to go back to the conversation that we had last week. Body and sold. Missing 100,000 teenagers. What happens to these runaways? Body and sold. A play using the words of runaway teens who got caught in sex trafficking community. Talk with local experts on how to fight the lethal trafficking. Written by Deborah Lake Fortson, directed by Jackie Parker. Hibernian Hall, June 9th. 4:30 is the free event. June 11th, 7:30 is the tickets are on sale, and we are giving away tickets for that. And the reason why I wanted to quickly go over that is because a Louisiana woman claims that a disgraced police chief tied her up and forced her into sexual acts in his office while she was drunk. As a judge rules against him in a civil lawsuit, Earl Theriot, 68 years old, was a police chief. A police chief. In November 1st, 2013, that's when he was alleged. I'm sorry. I thought you were convicted already. Allegedly, police officer. I investigated myself and found I did nothing wrong. He allegedly had sexually assaulted a woman in his office. He resigned in 2014 after admitting lying to the FBI about sex with her. But he says that he says that she came on to him to get out of jail. I wish you could see my face right now. Do you know how many women come on to police officers when they're pulled over trying to get it? Do you know how many women still get tickets even though they want to unbutton a few things? Hi, Mr. Officer. You still getting a ticket. She came on to me. I'm sorry. Who's the adult? Who's the person in power in this situation? He says that she came on to him to get out of jail. And now she's suing him, and a judge ruled in her favor on Monday. Hallelujah. Somebody got some sense. This is not known whether or not the judge will award money in the lawsuit, but yet, in 2014, Earl, 68 years old, resigned because he admitted he lied to the FBI about having sex with her. But let's go back to the beginning of the story when they said that he allegedly sexually assaulted her. Do you not see how stories are framed? Do you not see how the media tries to make you perceive things differently? If this was a civilian, yes, he raped her. Yes, he took advantage of her. Yes, he'll probably only get 6 months. But because he's a police officer, it's alleged. Even though the judge ruled in her favor, it's still allegedly. Why? And I want you to pay attention because words are important. Words are very important. These words that we hear, these words that we say, these words that are used frame how we feel about these stories. They frame how we perceive them, how we perceive the person, how we perceive the police officer. Like, well, he's not totally guilty because it's allegedly. Not just in this story, but when you listen to the news, when you watch the news, when you're not listening to the Wake Up with Tayla Andre show, I want you to just be a little bit more deceptive. I want you to have a little bit more clarity on what the situation, what really happened. The truth, it has many sides. The truth, the lie, and the media's perception of it all in which they want you to believe. I want to give a huge shout out to United Airlines. I think this is so awesome. I love it. Anybody who knows me, I am the biggest Fifth Element fan. And the Fifth Element came out, what was that, like 95? I believe it came out. Love the movie. I love all the technology in the movie. And I always wondered, why haven't we incorporated some of these things that just seem so common sense? For instance, when Bruce Willis got on the spaceship, got on the plane, and they were going long distance, he got in a little pod. This little pod was like, you know, a filing cabinet, and you just slide in, you go to sleep, you wake up, you're there. United Airlines just unveiled a new business class cabin with a single file sleep pod instead of seats. It's just like the Fifth Element, which came out in 1995, that had the same idea. Truth be told, in Japan, at their airports, they have little pods for you to fall asleep if, you know, in between your flights, or if you just need to stay the night and head back out in the morning. They're just these little single pods, space for you, space for your little laptop and stuff like that, little plug for your phone. So dope. Why on earth are we not? We are number one. We have MIT down the freaking street. We have Wentworth down the street. We have Harvard down the street. But yet Boston has no, we can't say we have anything that's technology or technologically savvy. We don't have anything that we can say, hey, we're really proud of this. You know, MIT, we built this. We have a damn robot that runs as fast as Usain Bolt. That's our only claim to fame right now. It's a damn robot that runs. We don't have, and these are real things, we don't have crosswalks that generate power based on people walking on them. Do you know there are sidewalks that use that kinetic energy of people's footsteps, and then they power the traffic lights? They power, just little simple stuff like that. We have no claim to fame here in Massachusetts, but we have some of the best institutions right here in the middle of our city. Our train system absolutely sucks. California is working on a high-speed rail. Japan has a high-speed rail. Europe is working on a city to city high-speed rail. What the hell are we doing, Massachusetts? With all this money that we have, with all of these companies that we have, we are failing epically. Does nobody else see this? I love technology. I really, really do. I know sometimes we use it for bad, sometimes we use it for good, but I would really like to see us grow in the right way. In other news, we're gonna keep covering a little bit more news. I just got a message from a guest of ours, very, very, very important, special. Love her, absolutely love her. She says she's running a few minutes behind, and so we're just gonna cover the news until she gets here. She was unconscious the entire time. Hero tells how he saved the Stanford rape victim as fellow Swedish graduate revealed to have wept after pinning attacker to the ground. Carl Frederick Arnott and Peter Johnson tackled Stanford athlete Brock Turner to the ground when they found him raping a young woman last year. Last week, the judge, Aaron Persky, sparked controversy when he sentenced Turner to a relatively light 6-month sentence in jail and 3 years probation. In interviews after the sentencing, Carl Frederick described coming across Turner and the unconscious woman while biking on campus. Arnott and Johnson, Swedish graduate students at the time, immediately knew something was wrong and confronted Turner. When Turner tried to run away, Johnson chased after him and tackled him to the ground while Arnott checked to make sure that the victim was alive. They then stayed with the girl and Turner until police could arrive. A police report revealed how Johnson wept as he recounted what he saw. Both men were key witnesses at the trial and described by the victim as heroes in her impact statement. This is going on. This is going on. All you have to do, you see something, you say something. I want to remind you of the story that we read, I want to say about a year and a half ago, of the young woman during spring break who was being raped on the beach in Florida, and people watched it, put it on World Star, and took videos of it. But not one person stopped to help her. I want to make note that the two gentlemen that helped the unconscious girl that was being raped by the swim team All-American guy was Swedish. But here in America, we see people getting raped. We're like, World Star, upload that. This is our society. Horizon calling you live.
Good morning, Tayla. Is this me?
It's you, baby. Horizon.
Hey, I was actually going to talk about when you were talking about MIT and advances that Massachusetts has made and how you feel disappointed. That robot that you're talking, I know the robot runs as fast as Usain Bolt, but there's a higher purpose for that. A lot of your listeners are probably really big proponents of universal income, and we're not going to get there until we get robotics to advance a lot more than what they are right now, and that's what MIT is working on. When you start to replace workers with a robot that can function the same as a human, you'll have corporations which will have more available cash. In theory, that would trickle down as a universal basic income for everybody in America. I'm not saying that we're there yet or that we're going to get there. I have some strong reservations about whether or not we will ever actually see universal basic income, but that's based more on humans' drive and desire to function and have a job and create and build. A lot of men, their mental health well-being is actually tied to how they perform in their job. So that's probably a story for a separate day that people are going to have to deal with when they want to talk about like universal basic income and replacing American workers.
So forgive my ignorance really quickly. Universal basic income. I believe Switzerland or Sweden is currently engaged in this, where everybody gets a base income per month on top of whatever it is that you do. So, like, is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. There was another socialist country, much like
much like Sweden, that had the opportunity to vote for that, and overwhelmingly they rejected it. And I believe that's firmly rooted in, you know, people need something to do. You can't just like be like, hey, you know, we make enough money and we're just going to give you universal basic income, so now you only have to work like 20 hours a week. I mean, while that dream sounds awesome on paper, when you put it into function in reality, if people don't have something to do, if they don't go out and push themselves to like exercise and whatnot, then you're just going to up an obesity epidemic because, hey man, I don't have to go to work. I get this much money every month and I can survive on that.
I got you. It's been a while since I heard your voice. Hello, hello. One of the things that it does disappoint me that we have MIT, that we have Harvard, that we have Wentworth Institution, and we don't have enough, I want to say enough projects. You know, I read stories all the time. MIT, you know, wants to put a chip in somebody's head so they can control computers and everything. But I want to see things that are more useful to everyday people. I want to see a crosswalk that uses kinetic energy, or a track field that uses kinetic energy to help power a school. Like, we have the brain power. We have the students that have that creativity. Why aren't we utilizing it? That is our greatest resource, and we're just letting it go to waste. And then we know they're not going to stay in Boston. They can't live in Boston. They can't afford to stay here. They get their education here and then they leave. So the least we could do is at least use some of their brain power and their creativity to start something or utilize something here.
That's that's a couple of things. Wentworth Institute is in a race, just like Elon Musk and Tesla Industries, to build a better battery. That's going to take time. I mean, technological advances don't happen overnight. These guys have been plugging away at this for a long time, and they're making progress. It may not be as fast as everybody would like to see, but you know, we're going to get there. I firmly believe that we are going to get there. As for kinetic sidewalks, that's a great idea. Why not start putting solar power on top of our schools? You have a very large untapped resource called the roof.
And that is so correct. Thank you. I'm in total agreement with you. Not just that, but all of these new buildings that are going up. I'd love to see some projects where, you know, this building is going to be 100% green. They have whole communities where the structure is made out of whatever that solar powered is. So all of these windows are now solar powered or absorbing sunlight to use for solar power. I would like to see some of these projects. Like, we're going to try to have, what is it called? Give me 5 seconds. A documentary called Billions in Change. And they have created this ability where workers are on bikes. And not only are workers getting exercise by working, but they're also creating energy for the building by this, you know, pedaling of a bike. Billions in Change. You know, I love documentaries. I watch them more than movies. There were like 6, 7 different ideas that if we incorporated these into our schools, if we incorporated them into these new buildings that were going up, if we just incorporated little things, we could save money. We could, you know, reduce the amount of energy and what do we have here? We have the, it's in Cape Cod. Damn it. Radioactive. Yeah, nuclear, like, we could, there's so much that we can do that we refuse to do, even if it's just a test run. And then we have quote unquote projects, right? I never understood why we have projects. People live in the hood, people live in projects, but each project should have a different project. Like, literally, we're going to try out this project in these projects and see if this works. If this works, then we'll duplicate it in another project. Like, I never understood why we don't utilize what we have. We don't.
I'm sorry. How often do you get to Cambridge?
I love Cambridge. I bike there. I don't really drive in Cambridge. It's annoying.
So you know that, yeah, it is annoying. So you know that the industrial park over there off of Alewife, it's got a bunch of biotech in it, right?
Okay.
Every single one of those buildings has to be 50% green. And a couple of those buildings are almost 100% green, minus the electricity that they produce. As for projects in the projects, let's put some solar power on top of those towers. Let's put some rooftop gardens. Let's get these people working. Let's get these people doing something that's going to give them pride in where they live.
Ashe, ashe. Thank you. This is all I'm trying to say. We could implement these things, but then we always go back to we don't have enough money. But again, we have all these universities, we have all of these companies, we have all of these corporations. I don't think we should have any excuses.
It's a little difficult to when you have GE moving to Boston and you know that basically they got a tax break on land and on what they're going to
everything,
produce, and yet they virtually pay net zero in taxes every year anyway because of write-offs. I mean, and that's going to start with rewriting a tax code, and that's a complete subject for another day because that's huge and expansive. The other thing that, I mean, you mentioned something about the 70,000 square foot garden.
In New York City, yep.
Yeah. You know, one thing that nobody talks about those things is how much electricity that building is going to need to produce artificial sunlight in order for that stuff to grow. All we factor in is the amount of water or how little water they're going to use, which I think is phenomenal. That's not something to be discounted. However, their carbon footprint and the amount of electricity they use to generate lighting in order to grow those, that is something that needs to seriously be looked at. It would be phenomenal if you could put a solar array on top of that building and the electricity generated from the solar array was the only electricity used inside that building to grow those plants. Then you have a 100% green operation and you are, I mean, minus the water that you use, and you are now producing more than a traditional farm.
Okay, so really quickly, what I did not read regarding that story was that specialized LED lights and climate controls have been specifically designed to grow the 250 variety of greens, all without the need for sunlight or soil. These unique lights allow aero farms to control the size, shape, texture, color, flavor, and nutrition of the leafy greens and herbs in the facility. You are right, because it doesn't say how much these LED lights are going to cost, but they're saying that it is going to be 40% less than hydroponics. You're right as far as the energy is concerned and as far as the electricity is concerned, and it would be nice if it was 100% green and did utilize sunlight rather than the LED lights.
Yeah, I mean, LEDs use a very small draw on an electrical charge, and they get a lot of power out of that, which is a great advancement for luminescence. However, though, I mean, it's still drawing energy, and if you couldn't that with solar power, where they collect it, store it in a battery, and then use it as it's needed, I think that right there is a huge game changer for humans.
Really quickly, Anari came up with this thing, and I want to know if it's possible. So Anari told me that he would love if his battery takes an hour to charge. And he said that, what if I'm sleeping and I leave my phone on the charger for 8 hours? Why can't my phone charge for 1 hour and then for the remaining 7 hours have stored energy? So that way I'm only charging my battery once every couple of days versus charging my battery over and over again. Is there such thing? Like, I told him he should definitely look into building or engineering something like that, or find out if there's something that's already in the works that's like that. But when I Googled it, I didn't find anything with like stored energy.
Having a separate backup to hold that energy, there's not really a way to store that. What I think would be most beneficial for his application is a battery that could hold more, could hold more energy and would last longer than. I mean, right now you can take some Android phones will go quote unquote 48 hours on a single charge.
Not mine.
That all depends on how much use you do with your phone. Now, Elon Musk and Tesla are trying to build a battery, but as it releases power, it releases at a different rate, thereby conserving more energy. A battery that can store and hold more in a smaller profile. these are absolutely things that they're working on. As these technologies get better, you're going to see huge advancements for people. We will probably use less of our energy grid. I think that these will be good. We just need more scientists, or people in general, to get behind science, get behind where this technology is going, and try and get out ahead. I mean, you bringing it to light is one way that we get it out there. News reports are one way to get it out there, but currently we're in an election cycle, and that's kind of dominating the news on any.
Trump, Hillary, Trump. I swear Trump paid every news station on earth to say his name 1 million times these past 6 months. I promise, that's how I feel. You can't turn the TV on, but like, Trump's wife is absolutely beautiful, and Trump is absolutely amazing. Didn't you hear him be a racist? I was gonna cuss.
Can I leave you with a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I know that Trump's dominating the airwaves, and we all know that Trump used to be a Clinton supporter. Do you ever, at any point, think that he ran on the Republican ticket in order to secure Hillary a presidency, thereby negating a run by Bernie Sanders? We all should think about.
And you should just leave that right answer is needed, just right there. I love and appreciate you. Thank you for participating and educating us. I really do thank you. Last but not least, before we get into Dr. Atyia Martin, a group of Boston public school parents said on Tuesday that the newly released documents show Mayor Marty J. Walsh is working behind closed doors to shut city schools. Quality education for every student. I really honestly hate Quest. I did representatives. I can't stand them, but I do think that they have a point. Released a 30-page document of internal city paperwork obtained through a public records request. The parents group says that the material shows Walsh's plan to use school department audit by consulting firm McKinsey & Company to justify massive closures. We feel that there is a plan in place that has not been made transparent, and a lot of it has been based on the McKinsey report that will tell you. The McKinsey report is for everything, baby. They're like, let's count how many people are in Boston. McKinsey report, let's get a couple $1 million. Let's count how many hairs are on the head of Mayor Marty Walsh. McKinsey report, couple $1 million. Let's count how many cars are on the road. McKinsey report, couple $1 million. They get everything. Who else does reports? Is there anybody in the city that report? Apparently not, just McKinsey. Walsh was in China attending the climate summit on Tuesday, but released a statement through a spokeswoman. While I appreciate the import of the McKinsey report, it is only a starting point for analysis, Walsh said, and I have made it clear that I am not comfortable with any proposal that would close schools until we complete our comprehensive facilities master plan. I'm wondering what that is. Wolf said parents should have a voice in any decisions of closures. Of course they should. School closings are incredibly disruptive for families and communities, and if it needs to be done, it will be done in an intentional and transparent way. This process does seem to haven't been transparent so far, nor has it been intentional. Some of the emails released on Tuesday show that Ramon Soto, the city's director of external relations, had early misgivings about what would become out of the most controversial aspects of the McKinsey audit. The estimate that the district could save $50 million to $85 million each year by consolidating 30 to 50 of its roughly 125 schools. Soto wrote that Ron Darcy, Walsh's chief of education, that he had major concerns about sell, lease 30, 50 buildings as part of a strategy in a message dated December 16th, 2 days before the city publicly released a draft that omitted that element. More on this from the Boston Globe. Shout out to all that they do and all the reporting. We are so blessed. We are so lucky to have Dr. Atyia Martin in the building. I'm so excited because she is absolutely amazing in all that she does. Dr. S. Atyia Martin was appointed by Mayor Marty J. Walsh as the Chief Resilience Officer for the City of Boston as part of the 100 Resilient Cities pioneered by the Rockefeller Foundation. Mark. She is also the adjunct faculty at Northeastern University in the Masters of Homeland Security program. Previously, Dr. Martin was the director of the Office of Public Health Preparedness at the Boston Public Health Commission, or the BPHC. In this role, she is responsible for coordinating public health, healthcare, and community health preparedness, emergency management, coordination among the public health and healthcare system via this is so long and so we're like, what does this mean? This the beautiful Dr. Atyia Martin. How are you, my love?
Oh, talk about beautiful. You are beautiful. I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime.
What does all of that mean? All of that means, in terms of my role at the Boston Public Health Commission, is that we coordinated with all the hospitals, community health centers, dialysis centers, all the healthcare partners, including mental health, to develop plans for when there are emergencies. And then when there were emergencies, we staffed up the Medical Intelligence Center, and we coordinated all of the response until the emergency was over and we were transitioning into recovery. So it was a very busy 5 years. I think we experienced at least 2 hurricanes, a blizzard, and then we had the 5 weeks of snowstorms, the marathon bombings, trolley crashes, bus crashes.
Hold on, you worked with all of that? That's under health?
Through the Boston Public Health Commission, yes.
Really?
Yes, so coordinating the coordination across healthcare to make sure that our most vulnerable residents get access to the care that they need, as well as if there are a lot of folks who need medical care after an incident. There's a lot of coordination that needs to happen across the hospitals, and so we kind of facilitated that coordination. So it was a busy 5 years there.
So I guess that's a part of strategy that we don't even think about when you think about emergencies and the Boston bombing. You don't think about what goes on behind the scenes, and you were the wand.
I don't know if I was the wand, but there was definitely some orchestration happening. We had, after the marathon bombings, was probably the most intense response we ever had to do. We were activated for 2 full weeks, and we had representatives from the hospitals, representatives from the Red Cross. We had representatives from the United States Department of Health and Human Services. We had the Salvation Army, I think I said them. We had some of our community health partners. It really was, as well as mental health partners. So we really had a full coordinated response, and a lot of the practical things we were doing was making sure that the hospitals had what they needed in terms of supplies. So there was a shortage of blood, so we had to coordinate with some partners around blood supply. There was a shortage of amputation kits for these reasons, and so coordinating that across different hospitals. So really was intense on that front, on the healthcare side, but then also we had a lot on the human services side, and that was definitely probably the most heart-wrenching. Right? So there's the traditional human services pieces, some of the financial resources that were available to survivors and their family. There was the coordination of things like housing issues, things like it was tax day. Some of us procrastinated, so folks needed help with their taxes. But then there was some much more complicated issues, especially around mental health and just exposure to trauma. And someone asked me the other day what was the most significant experience that I had during that time. And I remember we had a young lady, the young lady who was killed, who went to Boston University. Her family couldn't make it before the memorial service, before they opened up the streets to close the streets to the public. And so we had to do a special session just for her, for the parents and their relatives. So myself and Dr. program from the Boston Public Health Commission went to the hotel where the parents were staying with the aunt. There was a police escort. We brought them to the site, and by this time, it almost was like things went back to normal. It was kind of surreal until we had to block off the area so that there could be some space for the car to pull up. And I didn't know this ahead of time, but they had found the police officer who was with the daughter before she passed away, so apparently she didn't die right away. And so there was some conversation that had happened, and the police officer was telling his parents what that exchange was like. And it was kind of very slow motion because there was translation happening, and so the police officer was telling a story, it was being translated. And as a parent, it was a very difficult time to be there as a parent, listen to the last person with their child tell them what that conversation was.
I can't even imagine. I don't think any of us can imagine what that would look like in any circumstance, not just the Boston bombing, but any circumstance.
That's right.
Right now, you were recently appointed by the mayor of Boston, Mayor Marty J. Walsh, to head the Office of Resilience.
That's right.
What does resilience mean?
Oh my God. It means so many different things to so many different people, but in terms of the way, I'll give you kind of two levels. So there's what the 100 Resilient Cities definition is, which is the ability of individuals, communities, organizations, systems to survive, adapt, and grow after emergencies. And they talk about two different kinds of emergencies. They talk about the emergencies that are more related to chronic stresses in communities. So things like racism, things like infrastructure investment or lack of infrastructure investment, high unemployment rates, the things that are constantly tearing at the fabric of our communities. And examples of those include the Minneapolis bridge collapse, right? What happened in Baltimore, Ferguson. And then we also have the traditional emergencies, which are the ones that we usually think about. The snowstorms and hurricanes and bombings, those types of things.
So how do you, that sounds like a really broad range. How do you cover snowstorms, racism, and lack of infrastructure? Like, how do
you do all of that? You do all of that by prioritizing. And so we've been very fortunate. I've had the pleasure of, I think, having 164 meetings between September and February. September of 2015 to February of 2016.
You sound like you had more meetings than the mayor and governor combined.
Probably not, but it was it was up there. It was up there. And it was very eye-opening around some of the shared issues across different constituents. So whether we're talking about the private sector or we're talking about community advocates, our own government cabinet and department heads, and our nonprofits, philanthropy. So it really was very clear that race was something that folks wanted to focus on. And that there was this very explicit language around we need to change the way we deal with race and racism in our country and in this city and change how we talk about it. And I think that most people were just ready to have a real conversation. A lot of people feel like they're tired of talking about race, but we don't really talk about it in a very in-depth way. It's very superficial and it doesn't do it justice, especially considering the long history of policies and practices, especially considering the long process of socialization in terms of how we come to believe what we believe about ourselves and other people. And this idea of how some of our most preciously held beliefs around if you work hard, you'll succeed, and this idea of meritocracy that doesn't line up with kind of some of the things that we see in our day-to-day lives and that we experience. And so it creates this clash. And so I think in order for us to really identify how are we going to address the inequities we have in not just in Boston, not just the ones that we see in Boston, but ones that every city is seeing. But for Boston, how do we really understand what these inequities are? How do we understand where we're seeing the biggest inequities?
We just got a McKinsey report.
I heard you talking about that. You had some explicit thoughts about that.
I think I have explicit thoughts probably every day.
But that's a good thing. We need more people with some explicit thoughts about things. And I think it's a symbol of paying attention. I think it's important for us to be able to really engage on issues that we have to, in many cases, like we have to take a position, because then that allows for conversation. That allows for real kind of, iron sharpening iron, as we like to say. And I think that for the city of Boston, what we know is that the inequities we see, whether we're talking about education, or whether we're talking about wealth or health, or even the big issues that we're dealing with, the disproportionately burdens communities of color. And so there's some big questions we have to ask of ourselves as individuals and as institutions that require us to talk about race. We can't talk about these issues without talking about race.
So let's talk about big issues. For those who don't know, we are currently in the building with Dr. Atyia, and she heads the Office of Resilience for Mayor Marty J. Walsh. And talking about race and some of the big issues, when we know, right now the BRA has 6 more years of eminent domain. They have 6 more years of zoning powers. They have 6 more years of, so far in the past 18 months, I believe it's $1.6 billion that they've spent to, put up all of these amazing buildings that we cannot afford, that we cannot live in. Many of us don't make that $84,000, and anybody making between $47,000 and $67,000 are kind of lost. I have a few friends that are like, Tayla, I have to move outside of the city. I can't live here. When we think about education, and when we think about the JP moms, we think about Quest, and we think about, the selected few that are fighting for the whole. And not just that, but the fact that we have many construction companies out here that are not hiring people that look like us. We have ordinances on the books that do not, are not adhered to. There's not a proper representation across all of these big ticket issues. And race is a problem when it comes to these. As the Office of Resilience, what steps are being taken to ensure that there is some equity and some of those that are in power taking responsibility and acknowledging the wrongs that have been done? And even if it's, by default or not on purpose, and this is just the way the system is. And I speak to that as far as our police department is. That's just the way the system is. That's just the way it's always been. What steps are being taken to alter what we see now?
So I think the first step is to have folks understand that racism is a problem, and not in the sense that the common discourse or the way we're talking about it in the media is. So when we talk about racism in the media, we talk about racists, like individuals who hold these very conscious beliefs and hate everybody who's not their race, right? And so that is not what we have today, right? What we have today is a long history of this socialization of the way we think about other people and ourselves, like I said earlier. And the way that plays out is in very subtle ways. And so it plays out in the sense of when you think about a specific community and you think about what the realities of those communities are, if you didn't grow up there and that's not your community, then it's hard to understand really what that experience is without engaging people. And I think when we look at the road that we have ahead, and when we look at where we need to be, it's getting folks to understand at an individual level the bias that we all have and how it impacts how it impacts the way that we make decisions, even when we're not conscious of it. And then at an institutional level, that status quo is by definition perpetuation of inequities because of the way that systems have been built in the past, and the way they've been built in the past is very much rooted in exclusion. And so we've kind of built a bunch of stuff on these systems with this idea of being race blind, but in essence what that does is perpetuate the inequities. And so really the work that we're trying to do is really make that connection between the fact that we all have bias, and it's not, in many cases, it's not just white people, it's also us, community, people of color.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
And we've internalized a lot of these messages and behave in certain ways. And so sometimes it makes things complicated because people are like, well, that's a person of color. So of course, you know, there wasn't anything behind that. But in many cases, you know, we all hold bias. But there's things we can do about that, right? We can learn and grow and open ourselves up to really self-evaluation to make sure that we're aware of this fact and interrupt it. The other piece is as institutions that we can build in policies and practices that buffer from status quo and bias. And so some of the interesting approaches that are coming out of the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, which is a national association or network of cities and regions across the country who are really looking at how do you operationalize equity, specifically racial equity.
That sounds impossible. Like, that doesn't even sound like, how do you operationalize equity?
It's fancy words, but in essence, what it is asking ourselves additional questions, right? And so if we look at a policy decision, there's several good examples. I think one I'll give that's not government related, which is resumes. Right? So there's been studies that show that when people have a resume and they submit it in, that the people on the receiving end will call back the person with the white sounding name over a name that sounds like it's a specific race or ethnicity 50% of the time, even when the resume has the exact same content. The only difference is the name.
Tyrone and Shaniqua.
Yes, ma'am. So if that's on the resume, subconsciously, and people don't even know they're doing it, but they're making that judgment call associated with what it means to, what they think it means to be a part of that culture. And so we know if we have blind resumes,
like nameless resumes?
Nameless and addressless, because you can look at neighborhoods.
And by your zip code, yeah.
And so by having blind resumes, that creates the space for something very basic, which is to kind of separate out the opportunity for that bias to step in. So it's operationalized equity, sounds very big, but it's very practical things. My favorite is there was a period of time in the 70s where the symphonies and orchestras across the country were having a huge diversity issue, both in terms of gender, especially with gender, and race. And so they were trying to figure out how they were going to do this. So, and this was when they first started learning about bias. So they had these auditions where they called them blind auditions. And so they would have a screen up, and so the person would walk across the stage, sit down, play, and that increased immediately by the numbers by 20%. But then they realized that they could hear the person walking across the stage. And we can hear someone walking across the stage, you can tell if they have heels on, right? So then they stepped it up and they said, okay, what we'll do is we'll walk into the room and the person will already be behind the curtain on the stage. And it jumped up 45%.
Wow.
And so there are these very practical things that we can do. And those are very simple and very like straightforward examples.
But
in government,
for instance, really quickly.
Yeah.
So if we have like blind resumes, so Tayla is not, the blackest sounding name, nor is it the whitest sounding name. So I can get away either or. But after you say, ooh, I like her resume, let's bring her in, and I clearly look the way I look, then there can be bias there.
That's right. That's right. And so I think this is where the individual level comes in, right? So we've been talking about the institutional responsibility and the individual and the role of the institution in supporting the individual through this journey. And so it's important that the folks making decisions understand that they have bias and that their standard ways of looking at the process or the process has to be standardized in a way that allows for the interviews to be focused on the core issues, which is, are you qualified for this position based on what we need someone to do? And in many cases, there's this specific kind of bias that's they like to call like me bias, right? So when someone is like you identify with them more, you're more sympathetic, and so it creates the space for someone to be like, oh, they're just nervous. Right. Let me help them through this nervousness.
Making 1,000,001 excuses because if it was you in the same shoes, these would be your excuses.
Right.
Okay.
And then on the other side, you have someone else coming in and, you know, identify with them as well, right? You don't have that connection because it's a female or it's someone of a different race. And so because of the majority of the folks in hiring decision-making process powers within organizations across this country are white people, you get the perpetuation of that bias. And then within institutions, what we see is because of the like me bias, right? On top of the fact that many of the people we trust the most are people who look like us. So if we said, who are the top 10 people in your life that you really trust outside of your family? And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be people of the same race in that top 10 circle. And what that means for decision making is when there's a big assignment and you really need it and you want to get it done well, you go to the people that you feel like you trust more or in your inner circle. But that means that other people don't get access to those responsibilities, which are usually the types of opportunities that allow us to get promotions, right? Or even those types of opportunities that may not be as high risk, but are explicitly about promotion. And so it's really something that we all as individuals and institutions have to take ownership of. So just embrace the fact that we are all infected. It is what it is.
Baby, you have the hardest job in America right now.
No, I don't. Because, you know, one of the things that I feel very fortunate about is that this is a responsibility that we all have. And people are like, oh, Atyia, you're going to do all this stuff. I'm like, no, we're going to do all this stuff. I'm just a facilitator. I'm a guide. But at the end of the day, we all have a lot of work to do. And we tend to depersonalize this. We talk about everybody else, what everybody else needs to do. And
I'm staring at the man in America. Oh, yeah. You're right. You're right. So how are you facilitating us to be less biased and have more opportunities?
So there's a couple of levels. So the biggest piece is within city government. So we're going through a process now of really getting folks to understand where we're at in terms of the inequities that we see, what is happening with different departments, and where we can focus our efforts. And this is a long-term process. So we're looking at what types of trainings need to happen within government. We're looking at what types of accountability that needs to be put in place to make sure that folks are using a racial equity lens and a resilience lens for how they're doing business, and making sure that people have the capacity to do that. And it's not just a mandate, check the box, but actually people understand why we're doing this and how important it is for our residents. The other piece of it is in terms of externally really making sure that we're coming together to actually have meaningful conversations. And for many people, there are different approaches to how we do that. So different things touch different people. So I don't feel like there's like this model of how you do a racial equity or racism workshop. Like that always works. I think that people need to have opportunities to be exposed to lots of different things. It's not a one-time thing. So the goal here is that we have, this summer, we'll have 2 really big convenings with the mayor present. And then we'll have lots of other ongoing opportunities to continue the dialogue and really support people in this process. Because once you get awakened to what is happening and how everything works, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do about it, it's hard. And so there has to be a community that people feel safe and comfortable being a part of. And so there are some great organizations in the city of Boston who act as that community for people. So Community Change Inc. is one of them. YW Boston is doing some amazing work around creating that space for people. And there are several other partners, but how do we collectively come together to hold people in our city who are ready to do this kind of work? Because it's hard and we need to support each other. And then the other part is how do we share our lessons learned in government with other institutions and really challenge them to join us on this journey of really introspection, taking responsibility for the things that we can do. And that means that when there are issues that come up, that instead of saying, how do we get residents to do things differently, before we get to that question, what can we as an institution, as an organization be doing differently in order to address the situation? Why do we see this in that way?
So basically, being the change that you wish to see in the community.
That's right.
First, taking that first step of saying, this is how we are going to alter ourselves.
That's right.
And model for the citizens to hopefully walk in line with us.
That's right. And one of the things that's interesting about this is what usually happens because of racism is the community voice gets lost, right? And people get tired of engaging with the city, right? Because because of the history, and so this is really about the other part of this is about building that trust back up and taking ownership of being responsible for building that trust back up in our communities. And recognizing, and I think you said something very important in kind of recognizing the past injustices and some present day injustices that are happening, and what the city is committed to do to address them. And granted, the city, as city agencies, can't do everything, but there's some important things that can be done. And so it's a very exciting time of being introspective and really looking at how we are going to do this work, because it's not an overnight kind of thing, but there are some short-term wins we can get, as well as kind of building the infrastructure over time to make sure we get our folks trained up on how to do this, how to have meaningful conversations in communities while acknowledging the fact that there is this trust that needs to be built, and that people are hurt, and people are tired, and so without acknowledging that, you're just kind of alienating people, right? And that's why I think when you go to many community meetings, especially the ones that government is leading, oftentimes you see kind of people get up and people are almost giving their testimony like they're in church, right?
Exactly.
They're saying, listen, this is what happened to me. This is how horrible it was. And by, whatever graces, it either went well or it didn't go well. And this is my frustration. And people are so intense and passionate because they're hurting, right? They're hurting. This has been, it's so cumulative. It builds on top of it. And every day you're seeing things that are almost attacks on your culture and who you are, right? Getting these messages from TV and the news and media, other media sources, and the music, and we're getting all education, even what we're learning in school or what we're not learning in school, right? So we're getting all of these mixed messages, but in many cases they're assaulting us and who we are, but the rest of the world doesn't see that. It's not their experience.
So what do some of these summer workshops, you said there's going to be 2 summer workshops and then something in the fall. What does this look like?
So we're working out the details now, but really the goal is that we recognize the urgency around addressing racism, that we recognize the direction for us as individuals and as the city in terms of things that we need to be doing, getting folks on the same page around this language. What is racism? Let's just be clear about what it is, and that it is the system, the hierarchy, the culture, the thinking that on the other end disproportionately benefits white people more than it does people of color. And the reason for that is kind of, again, this long history since the beginning of our country of how we came to be and all the policies that have led here, and the continued perpetuation, of those messages. And so I want to be clear about some of the policies, because I think these are not the things we learn in school. And I wish more of us knew about these things, because it provides the type of clarity that allows us to not just focus on individual behavior. We have to pay attention to individual behavior. But there's this huge piece around how did we get here, right? So, for example, Social Security Administration, when that was first developed, right, it didn't allow for migrant workers and domestic workers to have access to those benefits for when they retired. And so that's not explicitly about race, but it was everything about race, because it was Black
who worked
people
in the fields,
who
worked in the servants.
Exactly. And so that was predominantly Black people and some Latinos. And so when we look at what happened with the New Deal as we were trying to deal with the Great Depression, and the billions of dollars that were infused in the households. And it was a great process, right? That billions of dollars helped a lot of people get their houses built, get new houses, do upgrades on their houses, all of these things. It was great, and it had a huge impact, and it created a huge middle class in America. The problem was it was only for white people. Communities of color didn't have access to those billions of dollars, and it further created a wealth gap.
And unfortunately, Anari and Asaria have, through government, they've learned this in school. But what you don't learn is that it was one-sided. It's like, oh, the New Deal. Let me tell you about the New Deal.
It was great.
It was great. It was wonderful. It helped build America. But communities of color were exempt.
That's right.
That part is left out.
It's left out. And that's part of this piece around how uncomfortable we are with our history. But because we're so uncomfortable with it, we can't get to the types of solutions that swim upstream and get at the institutional and systemic levels. So when we don't understand these things, when we don't understand even how our neighborhoods were created, why people say, oh, Boston is one of the most segregated cities in the country. Well, almost every city is segregated in the United States. That's comparatively speaking, we're one of the more segregated cities. But at the end of the day, every city in this country is segregated. And there's a reason. That was because of redlining, right? As well as many of the other things that happened during that time, kind of the exclusive covenants that happened and all those pieces, but where we were forced to live in certain areas. And even if you were a white person and you wanted to live in a certain neighborhood, you were financially disincentivized because then your house value wouldn't be worth as much as if you just went to a community that was predominantly white, or that was all white. So we live in we have this entrenched history that many of us don't know about, and so it leaves us open to take actions that aren't necessarily going to have the type of change we need. So the more we understand how we got here, the more we understand how exposed we've all been to certain ways of thinking, especially about other people, the more we can take a more honest assessment about where we are and where we want to be, right, and how we're going to get there. And so I feel very blessed to be in this role, mainly because, my husband and I are parents. We have 5 children, and it's rare that you're in a position where there's this opportunity for being in a professional role that has huge implications for your community. And I would love to see that my children don't have to do the pull yourself up by bootstrap thing, because that's not a way to live your life. And so people say, all you have to do is pull yourself up by the bootstraps and, suffer and work 3
Twice
jobs.
as hard to get half as much.
2 and 3 and 4 times as hard. And that's cool in terms of, the fact that we had to go through it. But I don't want my children to have to do that. I want them to be able to do regular things and be able to do after school activities that are things they're interested in, not just because, you have to work because we need money and all of those things. It would be nice that all children in the city of Boston had access to opportunities that supported their full human potential and provided them the type of environment that allowed them to thrive and grow. And that's really what we all want for all of our children. And that's my hope as we do this work, that we're able to be clear about that's the direction that we're trying to head in. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So we've come to the top of the hour. Forgive us for our limited time.
That's okay. What's my fault?
We wish we had more hours, but we have what we have. You do what you got to do, like Dana said. Is it possible that we can continue this conversation at a later date?
Absolutely.
And we'll be able to find out what's coming out, what's rolling out as far as what the city's doing and how we can be involved and what steps that we need to take a look at that man in the mirror and make a better tomorrow for our children today.
That's right. You can get all that Michael Jackson in
all of it. Dr. Atyia Martin, how can we reach you if we have any questions, if we want to learn more about you?
So I'd probably say the easiest way is through 311 because I'm at my desk and they know how to find me, which is the mayor's constituent services. The other way is we will be rolling out our website in the next couple of weeks. So exciting. It's going to be the BostonResilienceCollaborative.com, BostonResilienceCollaborative.com. And so that's really paying homage to the fact that the folks that we convene to help us develop our resilient strategy for the city of Boston will continue to do this work moving forward, and so that it's not just government, this office that I've put together doing the work, but that it's really a collective and collaborative of people who have stepped up to do it.
And 311 is the way that we can get in contact with you if we want to be a part of that collaborative conversation.
Right. That's right. And 311 is a great number to put in your phone for anything that's non-emergency, non-911. So if you see a traffic light out, if you see trash in the road, if you see dead animals, if you see any of that stuff, call 311. And the great thing about it is it's very transparent. So when people put in a complaint, you can go to the website.
Are you serious?
cityofboston.gov, and you can see the different complaints that have come in and when they were closed, when they were open, when they were closed. And so it's
accountability.
It's accountability. So I
potholes,
really encourage potholes.
Everything.
Everything.
My neighbor refuses to clean up the yard.
311.
My landlord raised my rent.
So if your landlord raised your rent, 311 can connect you to the folks who can help you with that.
Okay. All right. So 311 is the plug.
It's the plug. It's the entryway into government.
311. All right. Is there an app for that?
There is an app for that, actually. It's the Boss 311 app. And so
and I can make a complaint through the app.
Make a complaint through the app.
Y'all need to announce this. I haven't seen a billboard or something. Come on.
They announced it, but I think we have a lot more work to do. This is part of the work, making sure we get the word out.
You guys want to do a PSA on Big City?
I would love to.
Let's do it. I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, ZC Boston. Do not forget 801 Mass Ave, free parking on every day, up to 2 hours for lunch. I had a bento box yesterday. It was absolutely amazing. And I already had some sushi, half price sushi on the weekends. Do not forget that they do deliver from Dorchester and Roxbury all the way up Blue Hill Ave till you meet that Columbia Road. FaithNaturalsBeauty.com, activated charcoal teeth whitener, activated charcoal face wash. Don't forget the Pum Pum wash. It's hot, stay clean. Deodorant and the rose infused oil. Huge shout out to Cruise Cares. The walk was absolutely amazing. I came out, woke up on time. I was there. I cheated because I bike rode. I wasn't. One of the things really quickly, since we do have a representative of the city in the building, one of the things that I do want to remind you is these hubways are for you. You may not feel like these hubways are for you, but these hubways are for you. If you have mass health, if you have food stamps, if you have welfare, $5 a year, you can get a hubway key that allows you to utilize all of these hubways. If you want to make a request and say, we want a hubway in Mattapan, go to the website. Tell them you want a Mattapan hubway. All you got to do is ask. You have not because you asked not, baby. And what I need you to do is if you have a full-time job and you don't have mass health, it's $85 a year, and it will save you from traffic. It'll save you from parking. It is absolutely amazing. If you have a 16-year-old that needs to get to school and the bus isn't always working out for you, as long as they are of the age of 16, they too can get a hubway pass. Again, if you have mass health or if that baby has mass health, $5 for the whole year. You can use the bikes up to an hour. It is absolutely life-saving, literally. Anari and Asaria have taken the hubways to school. They have taken the hubways from school. I've taken them when I need to go downtown to go meet people. It's great. No parking, no fuss, no money. $5 a year if you have mass health, $85 a year if you do not. It's worth it. I love you. I appreciate you, Dr. Atyia Martin. Thank you for your time. And I can't wait to have you back because this is some great conversation. The Office of Resilience, I really am excited to see what rolls out, what conversations are had, and how we can be the, as far as Boston is concerned, we pioneer everything. Like, we made gay legal. Like, you want to get married and you're gay? Come on, let's do it. We made that legal. We can set the example of how cities can be more resilient, how cities can accept this race equity and we need to learn how to talk to each other. We need to let it all out. We are not past, and we need to recognize our past, deal with our past, talk about our past, and move forward. Sankofa. I love you, baby. Thank you.
Love you too.
Big City 101.3 FM. Waking up with Tayla Andre, Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 7. Shout out to the Good Life Morning Show. I do apologize. We took up more time than we usually do, but everything happened for a reason, and God is good, right? I love you. Mwah. Have a wonderful day today.
You are so good. This is your calling, huh?
Just as know what he was doing.
Oh my goodness, that was wonderful.
It's not about me. It's about my people. I want my people to be free.
Well, you are doing amazing work. I love it. Inside outside strategy.